Ladies and gents, welcome back. Today we're turning our attention to China. China is in civil upheaval at the moment. Now, this goes without saying that if you have a COVID-19 zero COVID policy, well, you're not going to win that game. We've discovered this over the past 3 years now, that there's no stopping the virus. It's just we're going to live with it. Now, President Xi Jinping, he made a zero COVID policy. Now, he cannot save face if he let that go. So he's been cracking down on the citizenry in China. Now, what really sprung this one off was there was a fire just recently. Dozens killed in an apartment fire in a Uyghur resident building last night. Most of them are kids. Because of China's lockdown policy, each door was sealed. No one was able to escape. Firefighters came very late and waited without taking action by saying that they had to wait for orders from Beijing during this case here. Now you can see footage of the fire happening here. Families in a high-rise in China were locked in their apartments as the building caught fire. Urumqi in Xinjiang province, they were burned alive as they couldn't escape. No one could get to them in time. This is directly on the CCP and Xi's zero COVID lockdown strategy. Now, they were actually wiring people's doors shut in this building, and we've seen other cases around China where people were being welded into their apartment blocks. Here we have a bit of footage of that where they're actually welding people in because, somebody in their vicinity had tested positive for COVID in the area. Now the government is welding an apartment door in the Chengdu, China, to keep people in their homes during the lockdown. Now it's getting ridiculous in China. What's been happening is anyone who's come in contact with someone who was tested positive, they would, on the phone app, we might be familiar with those phone apps here in Canada, but the phone app that they had in China was actually linked to who you were, where you were, and who you were in local close proximity with. And if someone tested positive, a group, they would flag a bunch of people, and if your phone turned red, you would have to report to lockdown immediately, whether it was in your house or another lockdown facility. Now, Jack Posobiec writes, the nationwide protests in China this weekend were sparked by a fire in the capital of Xinjiang, where residents of an apartment building were trapped inside for months due to COVID lockdown, and many burned alive. This has become a flashpoint, igniting a fuse across the country. Vivian Wu reporting. In Chinese, there's a phrase, and I can't read that, which means a single spark can start a prairie fire. This is what we saw during the day in China. Students from Nanjing Broadcasting College first started a mounting gathering for Xinjiang fire victims. So sparks spread. And this is what we've been seeing all over China now. We have protests happening all over the place, and tens and tens of thousands of people out in the streets, maybe hundreds of thousands, all over in different places all over China. And this is not happening just locally in one or two places. This is happening all over the place. We have more watch scenes of unrest emerged in China's Guangzhou. I'm sorry about the pronunciations. As residents knocked over a quarantine vehicle, and this is barriers and flooded the streets after COVID lockdown was extended. This was a rare show of protests against China's zero COVID policy, which has been in force for nearly 3 years now. So people just fed up with these COVID policies, and some of these people in China, known as some of the most obedient to their governments. Well, we see why. We see why what happened in the days of the Tiananmen Square protests, but those were not as large as what we're seeing here now. We have more footage here. This is in Wuhan province, where people protest against Xi's zero COVID policy continuing today. Here from Wuhan. So far, very limited state response. Extraordinary what is happening in China. Even citizens of highly and controlled society are finally rebelling and want some basic freedoms. Astounding that the democratic West, including Canada, adopted these Chinese lockdown models with such a huge cost. And again, it's just more and more footage coming out all over China of all these people. Protesters in Shanghai shouting, "Step down, CCP, step down, Xi Jinping." Apparently there's a lot of anger over the fire in Urumqi. Unbelievable. We have protesters here. This is now Wulumuki in Shanghai. People holding up white sheets of paper. We don't need to write anything on it. It's a symbol of the revolution of the paper, someone says. Don't manage to send videos. We want freedom, they chant. The scene's growing all over China. Here's another scene. Crowd of at least 100 making its way to Tiananmen Square in Beijing on Sunday, chanting, "We want universal values. We want freedom, equality, democracy, rule of law. We don't want dictatorship. We don't want personality cult," which is the personality cult of Xi Jinping, which he's purportedly been trying to push somewhat of a personality cult, much like we saw with Mao Zedong when he was the leader of China, with his little red book and following similar way of trying to rule over China. Now, let's not forget that in excess of 20 million people starved in China during Mao Zedong's rule. He saw it that it's better to have half the people starve so that the other half can have their bellies full. That is a quote from Mao. Now, I put out on Twitter, the people of China are tired of living under what Justin Trudeau is trying to bring to Canada. We need to stand in solidarity with the people of China in bringing an end to the Chinese Communist Party and the social credit system technocracy worldwide. This is something we are not prepared to settle for here in Canada, and we don't want anyone else to settle for. China is the test case. Let's not forget that. And bringing that adoption to the rest of the world, we here in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, we've all been the test cases for that as well. New quarantine camps being built in China's Guangzhou city and designed to detain 87,000 people. If authorities switch your COVID passport to code red, you need to do your time. This is about pure control, not a virus. And this is not like it can't come here. And this is very important. Here's a personal account of how digital ID, central bank, digital currencies, social credit systems operate in China. Central banks and governments are nudging us towards this. We cannot let this happen. Wake up before it's too late.
If you go to China, they're piloting it a few years ago in Xinjiang. So I lived overseas. If you go to Xinjiang, back in 2017, they already had facial recognition cameras there. So if you jaywalked in Shenzhen, they would immediately detect that and send you a notification, and they would deduct money from your what they call WeChat account. They use two main apps, WeChat and Alipay. So you can actually deduct your money directly from your account. This is 4 years ago, so this is not like some sort of conspiracy theory. It's not something that's going to happen 10 years into the future. This happened pre-corona in China. And so this system in China that exists is extremely advanced. They can detect if it's a man or a woman. They can guess your age. They can detect what kind of car model it is, who the manufacturer is. This is a sort of technology that we see in all these dystopian sort of films and whatever. And people keep putting it off and thinking that this is something that's going to happen later in my kids' lifetime or my grandkids. It's already here. And if this gets implemented anywhere, especially in a Western nation, it's not going away. Israel is already talking about the 4th shot. Then they're going to be going to herpes, and they're going to ask if you're gay. They're going to be asking if you ate 3 pizzas this week because it's unhealthy. If you buy certain books in certain countries, your country doesn't like you. You'll lose points in the social credit score system. So this is already the reality of the world in certain places, and we need to be aware of that if we don't want that or if we do. And to be perfectly honest, anybody who wants this vaccine passport, it's a misnomer. It's total control. Everything you do or don't do will be calculated to the point where if they can detect your GPS signal, if you have a phone on you, they can detect who you're hanging out with. Oh, you're hanging out with somebody that said something bad 9 years ago on Weibo, okay, like a Chinese equivalent to Facebook or something like that, right? Oh, you lose 2 points. Oh, you bought Japanese books, you lose 5 points because you don't like Japan. This is what is going to come here because it's already there.
And we're doing that a little bit with contact tracing for COVID, aren't we? So that they can see where you're at and who you're with.
The simple reality is that the technology that CSIS has and all these big tech corporations, they already know where you are. It's just that they don't want to shock the system too much and admit that they have it. Edward Snowden revealed all this back in 2013. He fled to Hong Kong. They wouldn't keep him there, so now he's in Russia.
Yeah.
But the NSA has all of your information. They know your Google searches from like February 9th, 2004 in a bunker in Colorado.
Help me, Rhonda.
Right? They have all this information. So, but they don't, like in the US, they have the 4th Amendment. They're not supposed to track you forever, right? So they pretend they don't have it, but they do. Yeah. If they really want to utilize it.
And well, I'm sure the video went on further, but here's the situation we have now. We don't want this. This is what our government leaders are pushing for, to bring more of a Chinese-style technocracy to our shores. And, well, I know there's a lot of people that watch this channel that do not want that to happen. Now, China being the test case for this type of technology, I'm personally glad to see the direction that it's going. I'm glad to see the Chinese people finally stepping up to the plate and saying enough is enough and we're not going to take this anymore. If anything, we should all be applauding them and we should be supporting them and showing our own solidarity with them in their decisions to step up against their communist government in China. So Godspeed to all those people in China that are protesting for freedom and for their own liberties. And, let's hope they do well. Leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think of this situation, what it is that we could do to help people in China as they're fighting against, the totalitarian government. They're one of the worst governments that the world has ever seen. Leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think. We'll see you in the next one. Keep on trucking.